We're talking about origins, and we're in the process between Pesach and Shavuos. It's important to talk about the concept of the giving of the Torah. Now, there is a tradition from rabbi to student. It used to be from father to son. Today the fathers don't have, not all of the fathers have the tradition for various reasons, but we have it from teacher to student. We have the tradition of teacher to student going all the way back to Moses. We have the only continuous tradition that exists in the world. For example, astrology, when they go back to ancient documents, go back to Jewish documents. And the reason for that is because we have the only unbroken chain from the ancient world, from all of the various nations, all of those who believe in astrology, the Chinese and the Babylonians. There was always a break in the tradition. We have a continuous tradition dating all the way back to Moses, that Moses indeed received the Torah in front of all of the people of Israel. Now, if this was not true, it could not have lasted. If you didn't have all the people as witnesses, they would have said it was false and they wouldn't have accepted it. Well, there was always the rebellions were only because of practical considerations. The kings accepted idol worship because that was a way to ally yourself with other nations to protect yourself against a third nation. You worship the god of Egypt in order to protect yourself against the army of the Assyrians or the Babylonians. You worshipped the god of the Persians to protect yourself against the Greeks or the Romans. This was what happened in the ancient world. Alliances were made and you had to show that you were very, very open to the other person's gods and the other person's ways. But that was a political consideration. But there never was a break. In fact, all of the ancient schisms have differences of ideology regarding the oral law, but never the written law. The first major break was the Sadducees, the so-called children of Tzadok, who claimed to be from the priest, high priest Tzadok. And they claimed that everything was written in the written law, and you could resolve everything from the Torah itself. But they never, ever dissed the Torah document itself. Now, if this is not a tradition in their families, in their nation, after all, the Sadducees were primarily Hellenists. They were assimilationists, very similar to the assimilationist tendencies amongst our people today. Why did they accept the written law? Why would you want to? It would be easier to say, there is no such thing as a written law. The only thing that exists is logic, and I'll be friends with the Greeks. But you don't see that. You see that the Hellenists themselves were traditionalists with the written law, not with the oral law. And so you have today three basic streams of thought. One stream of thought, people like myself saying that we have a tradition, man from man, ish mipi ish, from teacher to student, going all the way back. We have the documents all the way back to Moses. The document says we all saw the heavens open up and God giving the law to Moses. There's a group that says this is not, doesn't happen, God doesn't intervene. We haven't seen God intervene in the Holocaust. We didn't see God intervene in the pogroms. We didn't see God intervene with Khmelnytsky, with the Cossacks, with the blood libels, with all of the terrible things that happened to us. Therefore, the God of history as presented in the Torah is not what we believe. We believe that there is a divine wisdom which we have been chosen to promote, but it is the wisdom of the West, the wisdom of multiculturalism, the wisdom of democracy. This is what we preach. This is our religion. We only accept the Torah as a tradition, as something that our people developed over a course of time, given to them by, inspired to them by God, but really not to be taken very seriously. And then there's another group which are a little bit pregnant. Yes, God appeared to Moses, but Moses was a backwoods fellow. He had some weird ideas, but God had nobody else to give it to, so he gave it to this man who was a liberator and a great man with a great mind, but he had some weird ideas, and some of the weird ideas filtered through in the written law that he wrote. God inspired Moses to write the law, but Moses had his hang-ups and wrote according to his hang-ups. But we're enlightened. We can figure out what God really meant in that inspiration to Moses. The problem with all of that is that who is the determiner as to what God really meant? Is it the ladies' auxiliary? Is it the men's golf club? Are it the kids at the bar mitzvah parties? Are they the ones to determine what God really meant? Because they have a different idea of what God really wants from them. Whatever they want to enjoy is what God wanted from them. So when you go ahead and you have the intermediate so-called position, you really have no position at all. Either God gave the book or God didn't give the book. But don't say God gave part of the book. Which part of the book did God really give? And if you go ahead and say, well, whatever I feel comfortable with, then most people will say I feel comfortable with a little bit less, and a little bit less, and a little bit less. You wind up looking like the second group. And that's what's happening. And so we have to make up our minds. Who are we? Are we from the first group, the second group, or the third group? The question is, Rabbi, is this a popularity contest? Is it true or not true? And I'm saying it is true. But in order for you to be convinced that it is true, you have to look at it from my eyes, from my perspective, not from the perspective of the world, because the other choices will lead people to a church, not to a synagogue. That will be the end of the Jewish people. So you have a choice. Either you want to be Jewish, then you've got to go into the Torah. Don't want to be Jewish, the end result will be, whether you like it or not, we will disappear. That's the choice.